Okay, picture this. A thin cord, just a rope, right? Stretched incredibly tight, it's vibrating, humming almost, with this immense power at the other end. Something wild.
Yeah, the whale.
Exactly. That line connecting this tiny, fragile boat to a massive whale, it feels like a really physical symbol of Captain Ahab's obsession, like a knot tightening, threatening everything.
It really does.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging right into the heart of Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
Hmm.
We're focusing on those chapters that really show Ahab's, well, all-consuming hunt for the white whale and the dangers that just keep piling up for the crew.
Yeah, and these chapters, they give us this fascinating split, don't they? On one hand, you get these incredibly detailed descriptions of 19th century whaling, the tools, the methods, the sheer guts it took.
Right, the practical stuff.
Exactly. But then, set right against that, you have this intense psychological drama. Ahab's fixation, which is almost, mythical.
Yeah.
And the whole legend surrounding Moby Dick himself.
It's quite the mix. So our mission today really is to peel back the layers of this huge story and pull out the key things. Ahab's relentless drive, the terrifying reputation of the white whale, and some of the just startling facts about how dangerous whaling actually was.
We want to give you that core understanding of this chase, this hunt, without getting totally swamped by how massive the book is.
Precisely. So let's start with Ahab. This isn't just a whim for him, is it? It's deep. It's everywhere in his mind. He says his purpose is set on iron rails, his soul grooved to run on them. What does that image tell you? That kind of language.
What screams inevitability, doesn't it? Like being locked onto a track you can't turn off. Those iron rails, they suggest a path he has to follow. Rigid, unforgiving.
No escape route.
Right.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about how consuming it is. It's become part of him, directing literally everything he thinks and does.
Yeah, like his mind's been physically altered. And he uses that other really powerful metaphor, the Iron Crown of Lombardy. He talks about it being heavy, painful, but still having this, awful appeal. He feels the sharp points, his brain pressing against it. It's not about glory, it's about suffering.
Mm-hmm. What does that crown really signify, do you think, about the price of being that obsessed?
Well, that Iron Crown, it captures the two sides of Ahab's condition perfectly, I think. It's the agony, the weight of his obsession, yeah. But it's also how he sees it. Its power, its importance in his own head.
He puts up with the pain because, to him, it's necessary for the quest, a sort of twisted royalty in this mission he's created for himself.
And then you have Starbuck, the first mate, the sensible one. He has that chilling line where he says, Ahab has blasted all my reason out of me, which really shows how Ahab's sheer force of will can just steamroll over other people's common sense.
It does. But Ahab himself, he seems to know what's going on, doesn't he? At some level, he dissembles, you said it, hiding his mad motive behind the sane means of just a whaling trip.
Why do you think he does that? Why the charade?
That's a great question. His awareness of his own madness, but then hiding it deliberately. It feels strategic. He knows the crew. They probably don't share his fanatical need for revenge.
Right, they signed up to hunt whales for oil, for money.
Exactly. So framing the hunt for Moby Dick as part of a profitable venture, that's much more likely to keep them on board, literally and figuratively.
Right.
It's manipulation, pure and simple, driven by that one single goal.
He knows it's about vengeance for his leg, but he packages it as business. It's unsettling, that level of calculation. Or maybe just what he had to do to keep the ship pointing his way, and it's this unwavering, all-engrossing object getting the white whale that controls everything, even his dreams, these horrified awakenings Melville mentioned.
Yeah, what do those tell us?
Yeah.
About what this quest really is for him?
Well, those horrified awakenings, they show it's not some calm conviction, is it? It's constant inner conflict. Even asleep, he's wrestling with it. All the destruction, the memory of the injury. It just highlights how deeply personal, how tormented his determination actually is.
Definitely. Okay, so let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about the whale himself, the target of all this.
Moby Dick. Yeah, even the name sounds like something out of a legend. And the rumors fly before him, tales of this sperm whale with uncommon magnitude and malignity. It's not just that he's huge, it's this feeling of inherent evil, almost, that sets him apart for the whalers.
What do you think feeds that perception, that malignity?
Well, the malignity, I suppose it comes from his history, right? Attacking ships, attacking people, Ahab's leg being the prime example. Add that to his unusual size, how hard he is to find. Those stories would just get bigger and wilder as they spread among the sailors.
Yeah, turning him into this conscious enemy, a vengeful force in their minds.
And you can feel the fear. We're told lots of whalemen were already wary of hunting sperm whales in general, let alone this one. Superstitions are everywhere. He's seen as almost everywhere at once, immortal even, surviving harpoons.
Yeah.
How does that almost mythical reputation feed Ahab's obsession?
It elevates Moby Dick, doesn't it? From just an animal to a symbol of nature you just can't tame, a worthy opponent, at least in Ahab's twisted view.
So hunting him isn't just revenge anymore.
No, it's like Ahab's taking on something cosmic, something bigger than life. It gives his quest this epic feel, however warped it is.
And the physical details just add to the fear. His uncommon bulk, that very specific sickle-shaped lower jaw, the thing that actually took Ahab's leg, those concrete bits make the danger feel incredibly real.
Definitely. And then there's the whole business of his whiteness.
Ah, yes. The whiteness. It's presented as this really complex idea, innocence, sure, majesty, yeah, but also the terror, the pallor of the dead. You think about how often white means purity or holiness.
And Melville uses that complexity, that ambiguity, so brilliantly to emphasize the terrifying power of the unknown. It challenges easy ideas of good and evil that you might try to pin on the whale. It's sublime, maybe, inspiring awe and dread.
But Melville kind of twists that too, right? He writes about whiteness being an intensifying agent in things the most appalling. He even brings up animals having this gut fear of whiteness, the cult spooked by the buffalo robe. It seems to connect to something really deep, really primal in us.
Exactly. Whiteness becomes, a veil of the Christian's deity, but at the same time it makes horrific things even more horrific. The white whale embody of that paradox, which makes Ahab's fiery hunt, as Melville calls it, maybe more understandable, even if it's still fundamentally mad.
Right. Okay, so moving away from the obsession and the myth for a moment, these chapters also really pull us down into the gritty, dangerous reality of whaling in the 1800s.
They absolutely do.
You get this great insight into how news about Moby Dick actually travels these special individualizing tidings passed ship to ship. Though sometimes captains kept it quiet, right? To avoid competition or maybe just the risk.
That secrecy tells you a lot about the business, doesn't it? It was competitive, it was dangerous.
Absolutely. Whaling was about making money, and a whale like Moby Dick, potentially full of valuable spermaceti, was a huge prize. So yeah, not sharing info makes sense when the stakes are that high.
And Ahab's own strategy for finding him, it's incredibly methodical, almost like a dark science project. He's studying charts, looking for patterns, the whale's periodical resorting to given waters, these veins or routes that sperm whales apparently follow.
It's a strange mix, isn't it? Obsession driving this really calculated planning.
It is striking. The dedication, the almost academic way he approaches his revenge quest. He's using practical whaling knowledge, usually meant for profit, just for this one whale. Shows you how totally consumed he is.
And the dangers of the hunt itself are just laid bare. We hear stories of whales getting away even after being harpooned.
Yeah, and sometimes getting struck again, years later, by the same guy.
Right. It just hammers home how powerful these animals were, how tough.
It really does. These stories show how unpredictable it all was. It wasn't like you stick a harpoon in, you win. The whale still had a lot of fight, a lot of chance.
And those historical accounts of whales actually attacking and sinking ships, the Nantucket ship near the Azores, another one off South America. Yeah. These weren't just sailors' yarns. They proved the real threat these creatures posed.
Which, when you think about it, makes Ahab's focus on one specific whale and all the extra risks that brings.
Yeah.
You can see why he might have felt he needed to hide that from the crew.
Exactly. They signed on for a job, get oil, get paid, Ahab's personal vendetta. That ramps up the danger massively, probably without adding much to their potential paycheck. So keeping it quiet was pragmatic, maybe manipulative, but pragmatic.
And we get these amazing little windows into the crew's life, too. The dynamics, the weird ways they were motivated, like Stubbs' method during boat lowerings.
Oh yeah, Stubb. He's just constantly firing off these ironic, almost nonsensical lines at his men, often with this really dark humor. Why don't you snap your oars, you rascals? Bite something, you dogs. What's that about?
It seems like his way of injecting this kind of manic energy into what was an incredibly grueling, dangerous work, right? The dark jokes, the constant pushing, it's probably a coping mechanism for him and for the crew. Distracts from the fear, keeps the pace frantic when things get intense.
Bite something, you dogs. It is bizarre, terrifying orders given like he's just chatting. It's definitely a way to crank up the energy. And then there's the whale line itself. So dangerous. Melville calls it capable of crushing the whole boat in its coils, a constant threat.
The hangman's nooses image,
Yeah,
chilling.
yeah. And comparing it to a steam engine's power, or Mazeppa being dragged to his death, it just emphasizes this uncontrollable force they're dealing with. What exactly made that line so deadly?
Well, imagine that rope under incredible tension. When a harpooned whale dives deep or takes off running, it could just whip around the boat with unbelievable force.
Snagging someone.
Easily, dragging them overboard, taking off a limb. The hangman's nooses fits perfectly. It was that lethal.
And the killing itself. Melville doesn't spare us the details. Stubb harpooning, then lancing the whale, the line just screaming out, the boat yanked through the water, that exhausting final struggle, the flurry, it's visceral, it's ugly.
Yeah, he doesn't romanticize it at all. He shows the sheer physical effort, the violence, the danger. It's a stark contrast to any kind of, adventurous sea story.
And even after the whale's dead, the work isn't over. Tying up that huge carcass is another massive job, and the sharks show up almost instantly. Even Stubb demanding a whale steak right away, and that weird conversation he has with Fleece, the cook. It says something about how they saw these animals, doesn't it?
What do you think is going on there in that scene?
Well, Stubb wanting a steak right after the kill.
Yeah.
It feels purely practical, maybe desensitized. The whale is just meat, a resource. And his chat with Fleece, it seems funny on the surface, but it also kind of shows the pecking order on the ship, the rough edges of life on board.
It's that strange mix again, isn't it? Respect for the whale's power, maybe, but also this brutal pragmatism and the processing, the cutting in, the ship tilting dangerously, chopping off the head to get the spermaceti out of the Heidelberg ton, as he calls it.
All incredibly complex, dangerous work. And that accident where Tashtego falls right into the whale head, into that vat of sperm oil. Just another reminder of how risky every step was.
These descriptions really drive home the sheer physical labor involved and the constant threat of accidents. Getting the valuable stuff out of the whale was tough. Demanding work required skill, but also constant watchfulness.
Now, in the middle of all this action, we also get these moments looking at whales differently. Those old illustrations, for example, often showing them as just monsters, totally inaccurate.
Why do you think they drew them like that? So monstrous.
Probably a mix of things. Fear, definitely. They were huge, powerful, lived in this unknown world, the deep ocean, and people just didn't have accurate information back then. So maybe making them look like monsters helped justify hunting them, made the brutality seem necessary.
Right, those fantastical pictures look nothing like the real thing. And then you get the flip side.
Yeah.
Attempts to understand the sperm whale using physiognomy and phrenology, trying to read its character from its head shape.
Yeah, which was a big thing back then, reading bumps on heads. They look at its forehead, the fact it doesn't really have a nose like we do, how its skull kind of looks like a human's. What does that tell us? Trying to apply human science to a whale.
It shows how we always try to make sense of the world using our own frameworks, doesn't it? Even with something so alien. We want to categorize it, understand it, find something familiar, even if it's totally different. It's a very human-centered view.
And comparing the sperm whale's head to the right whale's head, one with that spermaceti organ, the other with baleen plates, teeth versus no teeth, it really highlights how different they are, how they evolve for different ways of life in the ocean.
Absolutely. And that battering ram power of the sperm whale's head. He compares it to a swimming bladder. It really drives home its potential force. Describing the junk and the case inside the head, it gives you this almost anatomical appreciation for how it's built.
Even the little details, like how they don't seem to smell much, how they breathe through that one blowhole, the spiracle, it offers these glimpses into how they're adapted for the sea, and the description of the tail flukes their power and graze that dense, webbed bed of welded sinews. It's quite something.
It is. It reminds you that despite the hunt, despite the brutality, these are incredible, complex animals, perfectly designed for their world.
These moments of almost scientific wonder stand out so much against Ahab's relentless drive. And you see that contrast again when the Pequod meets other ships, like the Jeroboam.
Ah, the Jeroboam. With that strange story about Gabriel, the Shaker prophet, and Macy.
Yeah, it introduces this other kind of consuming belief, right? A religious fanaticism that weirdly mirrors Ahab's own single-mindedness. And Ahab just flat out refuses to even read the letter the Jeroboam's captain has for him that says so much about how narrow his focus is.
Why do you think he just dismisses it like that?
He's just so laser-focused on his own thing, isn't he? Anything that isn't directly about finding Moby Dick is just noise. Irrelevant. That letter, maybe it had warnings, maybe different news. It's just a distraction from what he sees as his destiny.
He shuts out anything, any information, any warning that doesn't feed his obsession. Even that powerful metaphor of the monkey rope showing how intertented life is, how tied Queequeg and Ishmael are, that seems lost on Ahab.
Yeah. And the near misses add to the tension, like when a whale is towing the boat straight for the Pequod and then just vanishes. It builds up that almost supernatural feeling around Moby Dick. And Stubbs' superstitions about Fedallah, Ahab's mysterious harpooner, being connected to the whale, that just muddies the water even more for the crew.
Those near misses and the crew's superstitious ideas, they definitely crank up the mystery and the sense of doom around Moby Dick. They reinforce this idea that he's not just any whale, and it shows the psychological toll this long, intense hunt is taking on everyone.
These chapters are also packed with fascinating bits of whaling lore, insights into how the crew operated, the Laplandish speculations, that whole concept of fast fish and loose fish.
Right, the rules of ownership. If your harpoon is in and the line holds, it's a fast fish, it's yours. If not, it's a loose fish, anyone's game.
And Melville connects that to human law, to social inequality. Yeah. The idea that possession is 9/10 of the law, whether it's about whales or owning land or even people. Yeah. Serfs, slaves. It's a really sharp commentary tucked into this whaling rule.
He uses this simple maritime custom to talk about much bigger ideas. Ownership, power, exploitation, both of nature and of other humans. It raises some deep questions about justice and who gets to claim ownership over life itself.
Even the random stuff, like kings having rights to certain whales or that weird substance ambergris coming from sick whales, it paints this rich picture of the time in its strange economies. And the really human stories, like poor Pip going mad after being left adrift, or that terrifying description of being inside the whale's head during the cutting up, it brings the human cost, the raw reality, right to the surface.
Even things like the mincer wearing his suit made of blubber, or the tryworks, those brick furnaces on deck constantly boiling the blubber down, they make the whole brutal industry incredibly vivid.
And the tryworks at night, that image of the ship lit by these hellish fires, smoke pouring out, it becomes this powerful symbol for the whole voyage, doesn't it? Like the Pequod itself is sailing through hell.
Absolutely. The tryworks burning nonstop, processing the whale. Yeah. It's a perfect metaphor for Ahab's obsession consuming everything, this fire driving the ship towards its end.
So as we kind of come up for air from this deep dive into these really intense chapters, we've seen Ahab's obsession, how it consumes him, how it drives this hunt for the almost mythical white whale. And we've seen the backdrop, the brutal, terrifying reality of 19th century whaling.
Yeah, and how nature itself, embodied in Moby Dick, inspires both incredible awe and this really primal fear, pushing everyone to their absolute limits.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you listening to chew on. What white whales do we end up chasing in our own lives? You know, what are those consuming obsessions that grab hold of us?
And what's the potential cost? To ourselves, to the people around us, when we focus so intently on one single thing? Is there a point where the chase itself does more damage than whatever it was we wanted in the first place?
These chapters, they're really just scratching the surface of Moby Dick. It's such a complex, deep book. We really hope you'll dive in further yourself, explore all the layers of meaning in its pages.
Definitely. It's a masterpiece for a reason. And thinking about obsession, nature, and the human condition, well, it never really gets old, does it?